Hello, everybody. It is so great to see you all here. I am Elise Hogue. I am the president of NARAL Pro-Choice America, and I am here to welcome you to our first annual Our Freedom, Our Fight Activist Summit. I got to tell you, this is a dream come true. Ever since the day I arrived at NARAL 7.5 years ago, we believe deeply in the power of people to change systems and correct injustices. And we believe that if we worked and invested in creating spaces for our members to own their own power, that would be the secret sauce that NARAL brought to the conversation about how to move this country forward. This gathering is the manifestation of that dream so long ago. And you are, I always say this, you as our members are our superpower. You are reflective of the deep commitment and values, yes, to reproductive freedom, yes, to abortion rights, but also to equity, justice, and freedom for all in this country. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. We're going to have a fabulous weekend with conversations and hard skills about how we do the work that we need to do together. I thank all of our staff and organizing team who worked so hard to put this summit together. And I have the undue honor of introducing our opening keynote speaker. When we thought about who could set the tone for this weekend where we are gathered together to sit with the gravity of the moment that we are in and our own role, responsibility, and power to make this moment count. One person popped to mind. That was Senator Cory Booker. I cannot say enough about Senator Booker's passion, commitment to abortion rights, to reproductive freedom, but so much of it is how he has taught me and how we have worked together to think about how this fight is situated in the fundamental fight for the soul of this country that we want to have, one where people are free to make their own decisions with dignity and have the power and the resources to act on them. There has been no greater champion for those rights, those values, those freedoms than Senator Cory Booker. He is a frequent guest at our Men for Choice events. He is a co-sponsor of every piece of legislation that we have ever put in the Senate and cared about. And when we talk about taking back the Senate, we do it with leaders like him in mind who we know are going to chart the course for a better future in this country. He is a fabulous senator, a fabulous visionary, and he is a very, very good friend of mine. I give you all the senator from New Jersey, Cory Booker.
Elise, thank you. This gathering is a gift to me today, and the purpose with what you all are focused on gives me a sense of power and possibility and promise fulfilled. Elise, you truly are a friend and have been in personal ways over the last year of my life that I will never forget. And you were also in the pantheon of wonder women in my life. And I'm just grateful that you would invite me to be with you today. And I want to be very personal. I said to Elise before we came on live that this has been a stretch where the soil of my soul has been tilled up. And in many ways, in those moments, seeds can be planted, but we still are struggling. We are in struggle and in pain and hurting. I always say, if America hasn't broken your heart, then you don't love her enough. Well, these are heartbreaking times for people who are in love with this nation and her people. And I just want to go very personal with you because I'm sitting in Newark, New Jersey. I'm sitting in a low-income Black and brown community. We don't mistake wealth with worth here. And the issues of this conference lay at the center of the justice of my community. And I tell you, I got my BA from Stanford, but my PhD on the streets of Newark. And my greatest professors were these incredible women, pillars of our community, who schooled me, who took me under their wings, who taught me, who got me into politics. I would not be here today if it wasn't for these women. One of them is a woman named Miss Virginia Jones, who was the tenant president right up the street from where I sit now. Used to be these high-rise projects, public housing owned by the Housing Authority in their latter days. And she was a tenant president of these buildings since they were built in 1969. And I would eventually move in the 1990s, but her son was actually murdered in the lobby of those buildings in the 80s. When I found out about it, I remember asking her why she would still live in the buildings. I knew where she worked. I knew the money she made. And she looked at me almost as if she was perplexed or maybe a little annoyed by the question. And she's like, why am I still in these buildings? Why am I still in apartment 5A? Why am I still the tenant president of these buildings since the day they were built? And I said, yes, Ms. Jones, why? And she says, because I am in charge of Homeland Security. And I remember laughing with her at her comment, but also realizing the power of what she said. She didn't need a title. She didn't need a presidential appointment. She didn't need some highfalutin position. She was a woman who unfurled this powerful love and activism and grit and guts. And in my journey, I have to tell you, that sustained me and repaired me when I was terribly broken in my journey. In 2004, I was walking in this neighborhood up the street here on 18th Avenue, and gunshots rang out, and I ran towards them with a off-duty police officer behind me, and a teenager had been shot multiple times. And I remember trying to stop this boy from bleeding to death, another black boy gunned down in America. And it was gruesome. It was traumatizing. Blood was coming from everywhere. I was sticking my hand vainly in his mouth, trying to clear passageways, screaming at him to stay with me. By the time the paramedics came and shoved me out of the way, I knew he was gone, lost to us. I'll never forget that night, just standing in my kitchen bathroom, trying to scrub another boy's blood from my hands, feeling so angry at this nation. It's the closest I think I've ever come to just giving up. Why am I fighting in a country where everybody puts their hands on their hearts and swears an oath of liberty and justice for all, but those are words that we are not living? And I remember going to bed that night just hurting all over. My soul was aching. And I'll tell you, many of you know this from your own personal lives, that sometimes courage isn't the big speech or the big fight or the big moment. Sometimes it's just that voice that gets you out of bed the next day, that puts on your clothes and gets you ready to just try to walk out that door for another day of living. Well, I did that morning, and I went down in the elevator in those projects, came through the lobby, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I remembered that this was the lobby where Miss Jones's son was killed. And when I got out to the courtyard, there we were. Morning, no one was up, no one was around except for one other person in that courtyard, and it was Miss Jones, and her back was turned towards mine. And I felt like she heard me screaming like 100 feet underwater, drowning and hurt. And she turns around and she does the one thing that I need in that moment. She didn't say a word. She just opened her arms. And I scurried across that courtyard like a little kid, but I'm really this lumbering 6'3" man. And I get to her and we hug, and she holds me tight, and I let loose a torrent of angry, hurtful tears. And she rubs my back and she says two words over and over again that have become like a life mantra to me in the toughest times when I would eventually become mayor of this great city. I would repeat these words in the United States Senate when I feel like I'm banging my head against implacable walls of resistance. I would lean on her two words. And as I wept that day, as she held me and she rubbed my back, she said two words that have nothing to do with religion, but all to do with how we got here, who we are. She said over and over again, stay faithful, stay faithful, stay faithful. We have come this far because of the faith and the grit and the toughness of the people who came before, women and some men who were willing to stand up under the most outrageous of circumstances and still believe in a nation that did not believe in them, still demand that this country live up to those ideals of liberty and justice. This is yet another moment in where we are, where our faith is being tested, where people are hurt, where there are folks fallen who need us to be there with them, for them, side by side, to pick up the banner and continue the fight for America. I know this is a tough time, but we have to take on the burden. I will tell you, there's a song I love by Sweet Honey and the Rock. It's called Ella's Song. The refrain is, "We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it's won." Well, in the name of all those people who did not rest, Ella did not rest. Rosa, she may have sat down, but she did not rest. Harriet Tubman did not rest. And we as champions, inheritors of their legacy, of those who have fallen, like John Lewis, who we laid to rest, who marched and marched and marched until his body was beaten and his head was bloody, we cannot rest. The things we fight for, they are not women's rights, they are human rights. The right to control your own body. From the time of slavery and abolition, the right to control your own body. Times that even the great Alice Paul, who was protesting in front of the White House, the first person ever to be arrested there, and they strapped her down. She was doing hunger strikes before Gandhi, and they force-fed her, shoving tubes into her body. The rights that we are talking about, reproductive rights, fundamental health care, and abortion care is health care. Is the rights that my community that I sit in now still have not fully been able to realize. That's why we fight. And it is a fight that we all must be a part of. I say this time and time again to the men, and I know there are men listening in this gathering, that you cannot separate justice, that injustice anywhere, as King said, is a threat to justice everywhere. Whether it is economic rights, reproductive rights, criminal justice, environmental justice, they are all interwoven in the same fabric, same destiny. And we need to stand up with women and understand that not because women are our mothers or our wives or our sisters or our friends, but because all people deserve the right to control their own body, their own health, their own destiny. Full stop. This is one movement and one love. And this election, I tell you right now, this election is where we must, in this chapter of American history, show that justice can prevail. But that brings me back to the women on this call. I remember that day in January when Donald Trump was sworn in. I remember thinking that maybe he would give a speech that would speak to our higher virtues, but instead I heard one about carnage and that was divisive and degrading. It was such a bad speech that I still remember watching George Bush and Bill Clinton walk out together. And I saw George Bush turn to Bill Clinton, and I'm told that what he said was, and this is a presidential quote, so forgive my language, he said, "Well, that was some strange shit." And I remember that night going home and feeling my heart breaking and worrying. And I curled up in my basement apartment and just began to have my mind go through all the things that they now have the power to do. They control both houses of Congress and the White House. I thought about Supreme Court seats. I thought about reproductive health. I thought about healthcare and immigration. And as I felt myself spiraling into sleep, I got woken the next morning by, it seemed like an army of Miss Joneses, millions of women who understood that hope, it's not a feeling. Hope is the active conviction that despair will never have the last word. And millions of people, women across the country, took to the streets as if it was a message that I took personal, that this is not a time to curl up, to give up, or to shut up. It is a time to stand up, to rise up, to speak up, to act up and get in some good trouble. And so this, with 87 days to go until this election, this is our time to make sure that what has happened in our history gets relegated to the dark corners of our past, as we, the light workers, bring on the better days that must come, that have to come. It is time that we are hope unhinged. We are love unbounded. We are activists of justice in a long line of marchers who've fallen before us. I tell you this right now, it is time for us to show our faith, to show our hope, and to show our love. I have faith in us. I know that in this country still today, the power of the people is greater than the people in power. So much is on the ballot right now, not just for those of us who are the living, but for generations yet unborn. This is the most important election, I believe, not just of our lifetime, but one of the greatest, most important elections of the history of our country. And we have the power. We have the ability. We can be the hope. We can be the faith. We can be the love. Thank you all for your conviction. Thank you for your heart and your courage. I know that better days are to come, not just because of some Pollyannish belief, but I know that we are going to make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Booker. Now you all know why he is always our first go-to. Your heart, your spirit, and your words will carry us forth into this weekend with inspiration and motivation. And on behalf of our 1,000-strong members here and our 2.5 million members nationwide, we thank you for your leadership, your commitment, and your passion, and we will always be there fighting alongside you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, you guys, so that is a hint of what you're in for this weekend. And, I think that Senator Booker said it best. We're here to do sacred work. We believe, as an organization that believes in the power of people coming together for collective action, that organizing is sacred work. You are 1,000 people strong here today, representing your communities, your networks, and our 2.5 million members. And one of the things that I have been blown away by over the last 7.5 years that I have been honored to hold the position of president of this organization is how our members never give up. The last almost 4 years have been incredibly trying. But it wasn't a walk in the park before that either, right? We were tracking the erosion of these fundamental freedoms at the state level, my home state of Texas, where women and pregnant people were the canaries in the coal mine in terms of needing access to abortion care and reproductive health care that they could not get because of takeovers at the state legislative level that is happening all over this country. Our fight is a long one. And it is one in which I have seen you rally time and time again over the last 7.5 years, even as the stakes got harder. We spent months in 2018 fighting the Kavanaugh confirmation at rallies around the country and in DC, lobbying our senators. And we lost the vote count by 1, but I always argue we won that fight because their intention in the way that fight went down was to try and dissuade us from speaking our truth and organizing. And we never stopped, and we came back stronger than ever and funneled that energy into the historic 2018 elections, where we not only flipped the House with the most diverse, most pro-choice freshman class in the history of this country, but we flipped state legislatures. We flipped governor seats around the country because NARAL members know that change must come from the ground up as well as at the top, the presidency and the Senate. We never, ever stop fighting. And this is the fight of our lives, just as Senator Booker said. We are at an existential moment. We are at a moment where every vote, every conversation, every postcard, every call, every text could be the one that puts us over the edge. And in our time together this weekend, we're going to talk about that. We have key sacred work to do where NARAL members are a piece of a much larger fabric, a much larger puzzle. But if we're not doing our work, then it all falls apart. We do this in beautiful coalition, and our coalition partners depend on us just like we depend on them. We're working in states where we know that we have a unique role to play because we have constituencies there that can make the difference in the state elections, like Georgia, where we have massive accountability for the legislators who passed the draconian abortion ban that forces pregnant people to stay pregnant against their will in a state where they're offered very, very limited access to prenatal care. And we have a key role to play in flipping the Senate so we get out of the gridlock that we're in, so we get to restore balance to the courts, where we get to start to move legislation again. We have legislation that we know serves America, serves our people, serves pregnant people and people who need access to health care that has been stopped in the Senate, where champions like Senator Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren stand poised to move this legislation forward when we do our work of mobilizing these voters who we know can make the difference in states like Maine, Colorado, Arizona, North Carolina, South Carolina, Iowa, places where NARAL has been building strength for a very long time, which are suddenly in play because we are at this moment of national reckoning where people want change. You guys are gonna get a lot of opportunity to share and learn from each other and our fantastic organizers, the hard skills of how you do that, as well as have conversations about our underlying values and the fabric that knits all of our movements together to bring forward a moment that actually offers a course correction so that we can live up to the promise of democracy in this country. We know this is a journey. It is not a destination. And at the same time, we know the next 90 days to November 3rd are one of the most perilous and important points in that journey. I want to talk a little bit about what Senator Booker said, because it has been a real important way that we have been thinking about our organizing and our work. NARAL's team worked for years to put out some guiding pieces of content for this election cycle. You can see behind me, The Lie That Binds is both a book and a podcast that we put out last month. And we didn't write a book or put out a podcast to write a book or put out a podcast. We did it because we believe the key to good organizing is knowing our history, knowledge is power, and using that shared analysis to drive forward in a way that best lives up to our values and is most strategic. And one of the things that became clear and led to the title of this book and this podcast is that we must expose the central lie of the radical right anti-choice movement, that they ever were or are centrally concerned with outcomes of individual pregnancy. That is a lie. The truth is, and always has been, that reproductive oppression was a tool for them in a much broader struggle to prop up a white patriarchy in a changing world, to cling to power for white men in a way that they knew they didn't have any hope of doing through popular appeal. The country always was a diverse one that embraces the values of plurality, of diversity of experience, of autonomy, and certainly, to be reductive, of legal access to abortion. It was true in 1969 when the radical right was mobilized to power, not actually fighting abortion access, as they would lie to you and tell you. In fact, it was fighting school desegregation, where they invoked religious liberty to have their children not go to school with Black children. It was true in 1973 when Roe was handed down from the court, and there was very little organized opposition to it. It was true in 1978 when this governing group of radical right movement architects had lost the fight for school desegregation, not because we solved structural racism in the schools, but because the Civil Rights Act became law and they had exhausted all legal avenues. And when Phyllis Schlafly and her crew had won the ERA, becoming one in a long line of white women propping up the white patriarchy by oppressing through gender and racial oppression. And it was in 1978 that they actually chose to focus on abortion as a Trojan horse and a dog whistle to organize a minority for whom that priority was stopping equity, equality, freedom, and social progress. And it remains true today when 77% of America believes in legal access to abortion and all of the values that go along with that. I've been asked a lot since we put this content out, why did they choose abortion when they had registered no dissent in Roe? In fact, the leading evangelicals at the time affirmed Roe when it came down. And through our research, what we can determine are two things. One, that hostility to the idea that pregnant people should have autonomy over their own reproductive decisions was a really, really good litmus test to a hostility towards other forms of social progress. The Federalist Society knew this when they made hostility to Roe a litmus test for their aspiring lawyers and judges, because they knew if they were hostile to Roe, they were going to actually block so many other forms of social progress. And it was true in 2019 when a poll showed the exact same thing, that the assumption in this country is if you are anti-abortion, it maps most closely under religiosity. Absolutely another lie. People of all faiths and persuasions actually support reproductive autonomy and legal access to abortion. In 2019, what the polling showed is, in fact, if you look at people who hold anti-abortion views, they will also hold views that are hostile to other forms of gender and racial progress. Why did they choose abortion? Because they knew that stigma to abortion, sure, but abortion at the end of the day is a medical procedure and is healthcare, but really to people, women, and other people, having sex without repercussions and without the intention to reproduce was stigmatized and remains stigmatized in a way that they believed that we would not engage in the conversation. That the majority who believed in these values would recoil from the conversation because they're hard conversations. They're hard conversations that get into our deep-seated legacy of challenges around race and ethnicity in this country, around sex and sexuality, and that they could depend on the complicity that comes with silence if they chose abortion as the tip of the spear. And we are here to say in 2020, no more, that the first step in organizing is shattering the silence in order to command the vast majority in this country that believes in reproductive freedom, but along with it, all of the other values that we hold dear. And that by deconstructing their strategies, we will be in a position to not only be more strategic, which is crucially important when we're talking about winning the election, but to make this moment not just one of victory in November, but of transformation and how we lead this country forward with a commitment to equity across race, across gender, and democracy. Because the one thing that I will tell you that is consistent, and you guys know it because you're out there every day, is that when you don't have popular opinion on your side, and when you have allowed an extreme fringe minority, only 25% of self-identified Republicans believe in their own party's position on reproductive freedom. They're voting Republican in spite of that, not because of it. But when you don't have popular opinion on your side, what are you going to do? You're going to resort to anti-democratic means to maintain power, voter suppression, gerrymandering and redistricting, and yes, capture of the courts. So when I say that this weekend is sacred, when I say this is sacred work, it all stems from this shared history and analysis that we don't talk about enough. When I talk about the first step to effective organizing being shattering the silence and understanding the intersections between these crucial issues that Senator Booker spoke to, that is not because it is only that is not only because it's ethically imperative for us to do so, it's because we can't win without it. So I hope you will avail yourself of all of the richness of the conversations this weekend, the ones about courageous conversations, which allow us to talk about things that we don't traditionally talk about, demand that our elected officials do the same, as well as the hard skills of how you scale that up to make a difference in November. We are here to do all of this work together. Before I introduce Senator Elizabeth Warren, I want to leave you with a couple of Audre Lorde quotes. She is a poet, she is a visionary, she is an inspiration to me and always has been, that I think perfectly fit this moment and where we are in grounding our organizing. One, she said, your silence will not protect you. Now is the moment, and I know we're here together to learn how to speak out loud and proud and make our community speak out loud and proud about our values and what we need to survive and thrive. And the second is, it's not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. And we are here to do all of that together. I wish nothing but for us to use our collective power in service of change in November and beyond. We are in it with you. We are spurred by you. You are our superpower. You are our secret weapon. And I am honored to work with you. I am also honored to introduce someone who I know needs no introduction, another friend and a personal hero of mine who has been a fighter for women and families, who understands the deep and abiding intersection between economic justice, reproductive freedom, and justice. We are so honored today to be joined by Senator Elizabeth Warren to welcome you to Our Freedom, Our Fight, NARAL's first annual activist summit. Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Hello, NARAL, and thank you, Elise, for your guidance, your friendship, and your leadership. I'm so sorry that we couldn't do this in person, but I'm glad to send along this message. I want to thank you for all the hard work that you are doing in Washington and all across this country to fight for reproductive freedom. Right now, our country is taking one gut punch after another. Tens of thousands of people are dying from an infectious disease that is still out of control. Families are being pushed off an economic cliff as they lose their jobs and struggle to pay the bills. This pandemic has blown racial disparities in this country wide open, with the virus and job losses hitting Black and brown Americans the very hardest. And at the same time, right-wing extremists have not let up for a moment. Roe versus Wade has been the law of the land for over 46 years, but they're still attacking reproductive rights at every turn. They're still appointing anti-choice judges and still pushing for state laws that make it harder for people to obtain an abortion, and laws that could be used to restrict abortion in the event that Roe versus Wade is overturned, including bans lying in wait that will be triggered if Roe is struck down. Well, you know what I say to those right-wing extremists? We're not letting up either. You know, when I was growing up in Oklahoma, abortions were illegal, but people still got abortions. Some were lucky, others weren't, but they all went through hell. Many of us have lived in an America where people have died from unsafe abortions, and we won't go back. Not now, not ever. And you know what? The vast majority of Americans agree. They support reproductive freedom. We need to ensure that the will of the people remains the law of the land. And we do that by fighting to pass legislation like the Women's Health Protection Act, which will enshrine Roe versus Wade as law in every state once and for all. It will safeguard reproductive rights and expand abortion access nationwide. We know that access to quality health care, including safe and legal abortion, is essential to a person's health and their economic security. It is also a racial justice issue. Systemic barriers have made it especially difficult for low-income people and people of color to get access to the reproductive care they need. Federal funds are prohibited from being used for abortion care, which disproportionately harms people of color and their families. This is why we must overturn the Hyde Amendment, and we must protect free and low-cost care options like those that are provided by Planned Parenthood. We must expand access to free contraception, STI treatment and prevention services, medically accurate sexual education, and prenatal care. None of us is in this fight alone, and that is why I'm speaking to you today. To all of you here, I'm grateful for all that you do and all that you will do. So please, keep up the great work. We're counting on you. People across this country are counting on you. And me, I'm with you all the way.
I don't know about you all, but I am super pumped. It was so amazing to hear from both Senator Booker and Senator Warren. By the way, I am Travis Bally, NARAL Pro-Choice America's Deputy Organizing Director. If you're a veteran at NARAL events, I'm an old face. You probably recognize me. This is my first time and NARAL's first time convening you all in such a big virtual way. An entire weekend dedicated to getting ready as a reproductive freedom movement to electing and re-electing all of our reproductive freedom champions. You are such a critical part of this movement. This space is for you. We need you to engage and be a part of this movement. And we want to make sure that your time at this virtual summit is maximized. So to start off, I'm going to pull up some slides right now, and we're going to quickly go through some tips you need to know to have the best possible experience. First off, I want to go over the reception area on the next slide. The reception area, that's the welcome area that you saw when you joined this event. You can go there for the most up-to-date schedule. For really important links, we will share it in the chat box in the reception area and for any event updates. I next want to turn your attention to what you are in right now, the stage. This is where the big magic happens. The senators join, Elise, so many great speakers, and I am so happy that you will be joining. This is when we are all convening all in one space for the same event. Think of it as that big auditorium where I wish we could all be in person right now with that amazing energy that you get in person. Well, we're online, but the great news is that we have people who have RSVP'd from every state in the country who are on this virtual stage right now. And I don't know about you, but that would have been really hard to recreate in person. So I'm trying to see the silver lining. The stage area is where you'll be going whenever we have main events like this. I next want to talk to you about the sessions part of Hop-In. Hop-In, by the way, is the name of this beautiful virtual conference platform that you are on. After I'm done speaking, we are going to, and after we show a video, we are going to be going to a choose your own adventure portion of the summit. We have some amazing trainers. These are NARAL organizers that are the best of the best. They have been training folks for months. They are so ready to train you on how you can get plugged in to mobilizing the 77% of Americans who support reproductive freedom. That's a big number. And we need a lot of activists to mobilize the majority for reproductive freedom supporters. So after this main stage event, we will later on at the end be sharing you more information on how you can go to the different sessions that we have, both today and also tomorrow. I next want to turn to the networking section. Look, I love me a good chat box. I love seeing a video. I'm in pajamas right now. That's great. But I also want you, if you want to engage with a real face, to actually make friends and connect with new people that you have not had a chance to meet yet. I encourage you to check out the networking section. I have so many new friends who I were randomly assigned in the networking section, and I got to tell them, what are you learning at the summit? Where are you? How did you get involved with NARAL? And making new friends that I don't know currently, that's the beauty of the networking section. There is a time limit, so if you do make a bestie friend, make sure that you share your information with them if you feel willing to make a new friend. So that's the networking section. Now I want to tell you about the expo booth. There are some amazing things in the expo booth, let me tell you. So please go check it out. Our president, Elise Hogue, was talking about an amazing book, The Lie That Binds, that really unmasks the anti-choice movement for what they really are. The expo booth is a place where you can go to find out more about the book and purchase the book. You can also get amazing swag. We have a merchandise store and so many other amazing virtual booths that you can check out right there. So that's the expo booth. On the next slide, we're going to talk about some other capabilities of this amazing and very powerful platform. Chat. I know that you all have discovered the chat box because I've been following you. My mom is in the chat box. Everyone's in the chat box. Please engage in the chat box. We don't want just this to be us talking at you an entire weekend. We really want you to engage with us. What questions do you have? What are you excited about? What are you learning? What expertise do you have to share? We really would love to hear from you in the chat box. At certain points of the conference, we will have polls for you. And so we will let you know when we want you to click on the tab that you see that says polls. So that is going to be, we're not going to do it for every main stage event or every session, but when we do have polls, we will share there. Next is the People's tab. The People's tab I want to share with you. Again, you can take a look at who else is attending. You may recognize some names. I know a lot of you have been with NARAL for many years. If you see someone you know and want to say hi, go to the People tab. There's an option to connect with folks to request a video connection. If you like, for a private chat, a private hello. I like to think of both the People chat and also the the People chat and also the networking as that experience you get in a real life conference when you're passing someone in the hallway and you recognize a friend you haven't seen in a while, or you meet someone new who just wanted to say hi. That's the power of the People chat. So make good use of it. I next want to go over some of the boxes you see on the lower part of this screen. If you are at any point lost, you can visit a help desk. It is set up in the expo booth. We're here to help. We have an added barrier of technology in addition to like a big old conference happening at the same time. We are human, but we have a team in place. We can commit to doing our best, to helping you, any questions you have, concerns that are coming up, something you need to let us know that is happening. The help desk is here for you. I also want to let you know, this is a mobile-friendly conference. So, actually, I was attending a conference before this a few months back on Hopin, and I was listening to main stage events while I was on my treadmill. So I can verify it's mobile-friendly. But if you do have any issues, I do encourage you to visit our help desk. And if all else fails, I encourage you to find a laptop or a desktop, that will be best if you're having any issues with your phone, but it is mobile friendly. For best experience, we recommend using the internet browsers Chrome or Firefox. That is recommended. We do not recommend, and please do not use Internet Explorer, Edge, or Brave. Actually, never heard of Brave before this slide. Don't use that internet browser. So that is what I wanted to share. Okay, everyone. That is all of the tech. I have spent many months convening this space because in less than 90 days, we have an election to win. And one thing that I'm really, really interested in is taking back the Senate. I know that that is so important because we've had so many fights where, whether it be the Supreme Court fight or so many other fights in the Senate, we need to make sure that we take back the Senate and put it in pro-choice hands. So without further ado, I want to play a little video. We'll do it now.
You have to ban it. The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
I can't help but think about the enormous accomplishments we've had together over the past several years for this great state. With President Donald Trump.
The president, we have very good discussions.
He tends to be very gracious and he tends to listen. He will say, well, that sounds reasonable.
Nobody has been more pro-life as president than I have.
Do you want to see the court overturn Roe v. Wade?
Well, if we put another 2 or perhaps 3 justices on, that's really what's going to be, that will happen.
Will you stand with him at a rally in Colorado?
I hope everybody will. And I hope my colleagues will do the same. I invite all of them to do the same.
And we do have to support the president in a number of his policies.
I believe that he's changed his position on a few issues. He's moderated his position.
I was, in a meek fashion, pro-choice, but I become pro-life.
Would you appoint justices to the Supreme Court that would overturn Roe v. Wade?
Yes, and I think it's a possibility to do.
I believe that the president has learned.
I'd be honored to have the president come to Colorado.
We've got to get President Trump reelected.
Wow. I feel like I need to take a shower because that was a lot of disgusting representation we currently have in the Senate. But we have an opportunity to reset this election. We have some amazing reproductive freedom champions that you can help elect. So I have an ask for you right now. There is a link being shared right now in the chat box. We need you to go to that link and commit to volunteering with NARAL to elect some replacements to some of the folks you just saw on that video. We want you to let us know, are you committing to mobilize your community? What are you committing to do volunteering with us? Sign up that link right now, and we're going to follow up Monday. We only have less than 90 days before the election. So we really need you to commit to volunteer with us by taking action at the link being shared right now in the chat box. We have an amazing day set up for you. Before I tell you more about it, I wanted to also go over some community agreements. Now, just because we are not all together does not mean that there are many proactive ways that we can show community and appreciation for each other in a virtual environment, and certain things that we can agree we will not do to each other or in front of each other in this virtual environment. So, couple things. We expect good chat box and video etiquette. What that means, please refrain from cursing or displaying any form of nudity or inappropriate behavior if you choose to go on video. Please, if you are oversharing in the chat box, you know who you are. Give space for other people to share as well. We value your voice, but we also want to make sure other folks have a chance to engage and participate via the chat box. If you find yourself being a lurker, we appreciate it. You probably process a lot and want to learn a lot. But we want to learn from you and also how this information is hitting you. So I encourage you folks out there, and you know who you are, to step up or move up a little bit and engage in the chat box, even if that's not something you were planning on doing. We have an amazing moderating team that you already know. For those of you engaged in the chat box, we're doing our best. We are human. If you, this is something I need to make clear. If you engage in any racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, ableist language, even unintentionally, in the chat box, you will be issued a formal warning. We do reserve the right to remove attendees from the conference who are in violation of any of our agreements. And those agreements are being posted right now in the chat box. Couple other things. We all want to acknowledge the difference between intent and impact. So often when someone does or says something, even if it's just in a chat box, that causes harm or supports the values of oppressive systems, it's not always their intention to do so. But we also need to acknowledge the impact that any statements we make, how they may land in a hurtful way with our friends who are with us in the conference. And so it's really important that we all agree, that we can all agree to do the work to acknowledge that our intent and the impact of our actions are two different things. And I just ask, take responsibility for any negative impact that someone reports, hey, I thought that was hurtful. Any feedback you get from other attendees can be simple as saying apologies. That is a bit. And if you need to report anything, please go to the help desk at the expo booth. We're here. We're here to help. This is an amazing space. We want to make sure we maintain this amazing space. We have a few minutes before we are going to do a first round of trainings. There are going to be multiple trainings happening at the same time. You will get to choose which one you go to. If you want to go to multiple, feel free to skip around to different trainings if you would like. What I encourage you to do is to really invest in one. I can commit to you that I will get you a recording of these trainings Monday. So in just a moment, we are going to share a link that you can click on to go to those trainings in the chat box. You can also, instead of clicking on those links, you can click on the Sessions tab in the Hopin platform and choose which session you would like to go to. So my colleagues in the chat box will describe in particular what sessions are coming up next, but all of these sessions are geared towards one particular thing: mobilizing the majority of Americans who support reproductive freedom to make sure they vote this election. And even the most committed voters are facing a lot of uncertainty right now because their usual voting pattern may change now because of a pandemic that we have not faced in generations. So it's more important than ever that we reach out to every reproductive freedom voter. I'm counting on you. You have a 5-minute break until we start those sessions. You can navigate to those sessions now, or please feel free to take these 5 minutes to go to the networking tab, to check out the expo booth. But at 2 p.m. Eastern sharp, or 11 a.m. Pacific sharp, I do ask that you report to one of these amazing sessions that are happening. These trainers are inspiring. You're going to want to meet them. That being said, the main stage event right now is over. You all are amazing. I hope you were as inspired as I was by the amazing senators we heard, by Elise, who always changes my perspective on reproductive freedom every time I hear her, and I mean that in a good way. You have a 5-minute break. Thank you all very much. We'll see you in the sessions.